Imagine living with a fear passed down from generation to generation, an unspoken dread that one day the empire next door might return to crush your life. This is not paranoia, it's history. Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania don't fear what Russia might do. They fear what Russia has already done.
Yeah, and of course, I don't think we have to mention that Ukraine is definitely on that list as well, right? I don't think it's, I think currently Ukraine is number one, like above the list, like alpha on the list, hearing what Russia is doing now. Okay? Not what Russia will do, not what Russia has done, but what Russia is doing currently. I blame Tsar Nicholas II, Lenin and Stalin, and whoever led Russia in between the Russian Empire and the USSR. Yeah, so that's a pretty broad thing, but, unfortunate.
Over and over again. In these countries, the image of Russian soldiers marching through your streets is not just a scene from the history books. It's a family memory.
Yeah, that's true. The Red Army has, I believe that, let's Google. Okay, when did the last Russian soldiers leave Poland? Kiedy ostatni rosyjscy żołnierze opuścili Polskę? Okay, so the last Russian soldiers have left Poland in 1993, right? That was pretty late. Like Poland left the so-called Soviet sphere in 1989 when the regime in Poland fell and a new democratic elections were held. And quite a few years later, in 1993, last Soviet, or rather Russian soldiers have left Poland. So as you can see, that really is a family memory. Russian soldiers on our streets.
A scar passed down like an heirloom, and a quiet, ever-present fear that the empire is not gone, just waiting to come back.
And of course, there's a reason why Poland, at the beginning of the 90s, right away rushed to get to the European Union, to get to NATO, to build some sort of security guarantees. Yes, we all like the word security guarantees. We all like to remember how they were thrown around recently, how Trump has dismissed, but it's a pretty significant word. It's a pretty significant phrase. Security guarantees. And yeah, there's definitely a reason why all the countries in the region were in such a hurry to join any sort of alliance that would secure some form of guarantee that Russia will not be able to just rebuild and try to get its territory back, quote unquote. After all, as Putin has said, any territory in which Russian soldiers have stood becomes Russian.
My name is Elvira Barry. I'm a writer born in the USSR. On this channel, we don't just talk about politics. We uncover the emotional and historical roots of how Russia sees the world.
Hello, Incub.
And how the world sees Russia. Today, we are diving into one of the most tense and deeply layered relationships in Europe. Russia and its northwestern neighbors, Poland and the Baltic states.
The duel of two grand duchies. And of course, there's the topic of how Russia sees Poland as inferior, but it's also even more weirdly sees it as its eternal nemesis. Everything that's wrong in the region, Russia sees as the fault of Poland. Ukraine, well, of course, it's the fault of Poland. Poland basically created Ukraine by, at least according to Vladimir Putin's infamous interview with Tucker Carlson. Like, there were those nice Russians. In fact, Lithuanians were basically Russians, even though Lithuanians are not even Slavic people, but no, who cares? Lithuanians were basically Russians, Ukrainians were basically Russians, and then those evil Polish people came in and tainted them. They have spread their taint, and so Lithuanians became Lithuanians, and Ukrainians became Ukrainians. That's, did I miss a lot of the video? No, the video has just started. We're in 1 minute 17 seconds, so you have not missed much at all. A minute then of the Baltic Slav. The Baltic people are not Slavs. There's no Baltics that like the Balts are not Slavs. Hold on. Okay, there we go. The duel of two grand duchies. I'm hoping this video won't disappoint me as well.
To understand why the relationship between Russia, Poland, and the Baltic states is so fraught, we have to go back to a time before Russia even existed in its modern form. Back when the lands that would become Russia were still fighting to define themselves.
Excellent. There it is.
Because once upon a time, there was not one dominant Slavic empire. There were two. The Grand Duchy of Moscow, which would eventually become Russia, and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, which at its peak in the 15th century stretched from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea.
Yeah, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was pretty big. And believe it or not, its main language was not Lithuanian. That is an interesting thing that people don't understand. Since nation states were not a thing back then, since national identity was not a thing back then, language was also not an instrument of spreading national identity. It was not tied to any form of... it was not, I speak this language, therefore it is a component of my identity. Does that make sense? And therefore, in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, Ruthenian, for the longest time, was the primary language of law and everything else. The main dominant language of the land.
Encompassing much of what we now call Belarus, Ukraine, and even parts of Western Russia. At its height, it was the largest state in Europe. It wasn't some sleepy Baltic outpost. It was a powerhouse, multicultural, multilingual, and deeply sophisticated. While Moscow was still clawing its way out of Mongol rule,
of course, it's more complicated than that. It was not as deeply sophisticated as people might think. There were... it's a simplification. I'm not going to get into it right now, but it is true that the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was pretty big and strong.
Lithuania had already adopted legal codes, built
and yes, Lithuania should not be destroyed, no.
Stone castles, and established one of the most tolerant political systems in medieval Europe. What turned these two powers into...
Well, not exactly, because it depends on which period of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania we're talking about, considering the fact that there was a lot of murder and enslavement by the Grand Duchy of Lithuania since, well, it was pagan, and there was a lot of... Okay, I'm not getting into it.
Wasn't just land or ambition. It was religion. Lithuania's elite was Catholic. Moscow's was Orthodox Christian. And in the
medieval... This video is a little bit all over the place because I just cannot place what part of history, which period of history is this person talking about for the Grand Duchy of Lithuania? Before it was christened, after... Well, now I can see that it's after, but at that time, at that point, I'm pretty sure the Grand Duchy of Lithuania already had relations with Poland, with the Kingdom of Poland. Not as big and strong as Lucy. See, if Peter Parker had a brother, what should his name be? Thank you for throwing me off the whole thing, Fatal Parker. You seem to be good at it when it comes to streamers. It should be... Hello, Lettuce. Is Lithuania important? Very important. Lithuania is very important. It should be Jack. Thank you.
World, your faith wasn't just personal, it was political. For 1,000 years, the center of Orthodox Christianity had been Byzantium, modern-day Turkey. But in the 15th century, it fell to the Ottomans and never recovered. That's when Moscow stepped in. Its rulers claimed to be the heirs of Byzantium, the third Rome, the last sacred defender of the true faith. I have a separate video that provides more details. So here's where it gets complicated. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania had the land, the wealth, and the culture. It even controlled Kiev, the cradle of ancient Rus. But most of its common people weren't Catholic. They were
Also, it was not ancient, okay? Oh my god, I feel like I'm such a nitpicker. It was not ancient Rus because it was all in the century after the birth of Christ, quote unquote. So it was not ancient, okay? Ancient Rus. Come on. Oh my god, I hate this. I hate being so nitpicky, but I also hate inaccuracies like this. Also, it's a very big simplification to say that the Grand Duchy of Lithuania had it all, had the culture, had the land, had everything. It was far more complicated than that. Okay? Old Rush would be far more accurate, yeah.
Orthodox. And while Lithuania's nobility sought alliances with powerful Catholic kingdoms, they neglected the spiritual identity of their own population. That was a costly mistake. This was the era of brutal religious wars.
What? What does that mean, spiritual?
Your church defined your identity, your politics, your loyalties, and in a world without the concept of modern citizenship, religion was belonging. When rulers failed to protect your faith, you started to look elsewhere for someone who would. That gave Moscow a powerful trump card. It cast itself as the righteous protector of all Orthodox Christians, including those living under Lithuanian rule, which means the Russian Tsars felt that it was their sacred duty to save the suffering Orthodox Christians from the unholy Catholic rulers. The result was a spiritual tug of war that made political conflict.
It was far more complicated. No. There was far more complicated than just that. This is such a simplification.
Between the two grand duchies, all but inevitable. But how did the
Also, I'm
medieval
pretty sure that the Duchy of Moscow was not even called the Grand Duchy of Moscow. Like, was it? Well, maybe I'm wrong. No, it actually was. Okay, fair enough.
rivalry between two grand duchies spiraled into centuries of conflict and shape the fears of nations today.
The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Okay, now we're just skipping steps, okay? We are super skipping steps because before the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, there was an alliance between the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy Lithuania with a joint king that was before the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, okay? Relations started earlier. I hope this will be covered here because
the Lithuanian elite eventually forged an alliance with the Kingdom of Poland.
Yeah, because the Grand Duchy of Lithuania that had the culture, the land and everything needed alliances with its fight against its enemies. Okay, no! The alliance happened earlier, okay? Let's look, okay? I'm gonna shout out a great book right now, okay? Oxford History of the Union, okay? Here you go. This lady just said that eventually the Lithuanian elite has formed an alliance with the Kingdom of Poland, forming the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1569. Now, read the title of this book. The Oxford History of Poland-Lithuania, Volume 1, The Making of the Polish-Lithuanian Union, 1385, 1569, okay? 1569 was a culmination of events that started in 1385. Apologies. 59, nice, yes. Okay, so let's look at this date, okay? Because I hate historical inaccuracy more than anything, okay? Polish-Lithuanian Union, 1385. The Polish-Lithuanian Union was a relationship created by a series of acts and alliances between the Crown of the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania that lasted for prolonged periods of time from 1385 and led to the creation of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth of the Republic or the Republic of the Two Nations in 1569. And a little bit of a caveat, the word nation back then meant something completely different than it means now, okay? Before anyone smartly says, before any smartass says, hey, you said that nation and nation state and nation identity were not a thing back then. The term nation meant something completely different then than now. In 1569, which ended in 1795 with the Third Partition. Okay? 1385, Union of Krevo, a personal union that brought the Grand Duke of Lithuania, Jogaila, to the Polish throne as a result of his marriage to Jadwiga of Poland in February 1386. So, as we can clearly see, okay, the union between the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was not in fact forged in 1569. It was in fact forged in 1385. Okay? Okay. I hope this is clear. Look at this. Look at this guy. There you go. Thank you. So this
eventually forged an alliance.
So this is completely incorrect. I hate it when instead of what the video is supposed to give us, I have to spend a ton of time explaining why the video is completely incorrect on basic historical facts. I hate it when that happens.
With the Kingdom of Poland, forming the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1569, one of the largest and most unique political unions in European history. It united Poland and Lithuania under a joint monarchy while preserving much of their autonomy, legal systems, and cultural traditions. In essence, it was a republic of nobles, a place where the king was elected. Powerful families held real political rights, and policy was shaped by debate, not decrees. But let's not romanticize it too quickly. Like all northeastern European states, the Commonwealth faced harsh realities. The climate had worsened during the Little Ice Age, which spanned from the 16th to the 19th centuries. Poor soils, limited navigable rivers, and weak trade infrastructure made the region chronically poorer than Western Europe. When the king's treasury is empty and the peasants...
Wait, hold on. Let's not get... No. Okay, that's also a gross simplification. Like, I'm sorry, even in that period, the black soil was still a thing, you know? The famous black soil that Ukraine is now famous for. That was part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Ukraine is called the breadbasket of Europe. Remember that little catchphrase. Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe. Well, guess what the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was called? I'll let you guess. I think I've given you enough hints. Okay? Who even is this lady? Where did you find her? She was recommended to me randomly. So, how do you even say it in Polish? I forgot. Ukraina. Bak Europy? Flesh Europy. Okay. Let me fact check. Rzeczpospolita, obojga narodów. There you go. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had the exact same nickname. I'm gonna just let you figure out why the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was also known as the breadbasket of Europe. Okay? Goodness. Because guess what? Because I cannot speak to the Little Ice Age, but I can definitely assure you that the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had the famous black soil of Ukraine. Okay?
Destitute, the only way to project serious power is through centralized authoritarian rule, the kind that can quickly mobilize society for war. That's what Russia understood.
No, that's stupid. No, oh my god, that is so stupid. No, oh my god, I don't even know where to begin with how incorrect this is. No, for a long time the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was actually pretty strong, okay? And was pretty fine going to war with its army and together with the Zaporizhian Cossacks. It was fine, okay? The problem was not the Little Ice Age, which caused somehow everybody to be poor, and the fact that it didn't have super centralized... I mean, it was far more complicated than that, okay? Oh my god.
Power was sacred.
The problem was that, one of the biggest problems of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was how the power that the nobility held within the country basically led to a paralysis situation in the country. It's a little bit complicated, but the problem was not a lack of centralization of rule. that will allow the country to go quickly to war. The Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth did pretty well in war for a long, long time.
Divinely bestowed upon the Tsar. If the Tsar gave an order, the machinery of the state roared into action. It was not an ideal system, but it worked, and it allowed Moscow to slowly but surely conquer its neighbors. By contrast, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth remained radically decentralized. It was a paradise for the nobility, free to elect their king and shape their own destiny. In fact, many Muscovite nobles fled westward to enjoy greater personal freedom and prosperity under this system.
Yeah, but the problem is that within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, for example, those who were not the like designated nobles had a pretty much worse fate. Like the mention of Zaporizhian Cossacks, right? Who said, "Hey, we are helping you in war. We are warriors. We actually helped you a lot, okay? And we are still loyal to the crown, to the king, etc. So we believe we basically should have the same rights as nobles. We should be made nobles. The Cossacks should be as nobles." And the nobles said, no. No, you're basically, we are glad that you help us in war, but outside of wartime, you're basically peasants, and that's your role. And of course, I am myself very simplifying the whole thing, but it caused the wars between the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Cossacks. So let's not, okay?
It seemed like the Commonwealth was on top. In 1610, Polish forces entered Moscow and took the Kremlin. But that moment did not last, because when the crisis came, the Commonwealth could not respond with unity of force. Its noble democracy lacked the tools to mobilize resources quickly.
That's not true.
It still governed as if it were the High Middle Ages, when the climate was warmer.
No, what the fuck? Why are you focusing so much on climate? That's bullshit. No. What? When did this? What are the sources of this lady for these claims? Who is this lady? Who is this person? Oh, she's apparently a historian. What the hell? Or is she? Who is this? Who is this lady? Like, oh, this lady is with a Russian heritage. Like, no. The problem was not that everybody functioned as if it was still warm weather. And I'm sorry, the crops were still pretty plentiful, okay? The black soil, etc. And actually, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had means to mobilize power pretty quickly. Believe it or not.
Was plentiful, and the markets worked. But
the markets worked? What do you mean?
Those days were gone. In the end, they didn't have the resources to hold power. Not in Moscow. And eventually, not even in their own lands.
What the no, that's no. Yes, they did have the resources. They were extremely rich and powerful. What do you mean? The reason why the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth did not hold Moscow was not because of the lack of resources. No, she did not mean political climate. She meant literal climate. She said it earlier that there was a mini ice age. I have to look it up now. What is this? Little Ice Age, there you go. The Little Ice Age was a period of regional cooling particularly pronounced in the North Atlantic region. It was not a true ice age of global extent. The term was introduced into scientific literature by François M. Haze in 1939. The period had been conventionally defined as extending from the 16th to 19th centuries, but some experts prefer alternative time span. Europe. The Baltic Sea froze over twice in 1303, 1306, 1307, and years follow of unreasonable cold storms and rains. Like, I have no clue where this whole theory about the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth falling because of the Little Ice Age comes from.
It didn't happen overnight, but when collapse came,
I'm sorry, the reason for the fall of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth were purely political. They were not due to climate.
Brutal, irreversible, and devastating. How did these proud nations become mere provinces of an expanding Russian empire? By the end of the 18th century, the balance of power had shifted. The once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, weakened by internal divisions and external pressure, was carved up like a carcass by its neighbors, Austria, Prussia, and most greedily Russia. Poland, Lithuania, and much...
Actually, no. I'm sorry, I hate Russia as much as the next person, but no, actually. It was not carved that most greedily by Russia, believe it or not. It was most greedily carved up by Prussia. Okay? Like, in fact, that might shock you, but, and this is important context, at the beginning of the 18th century, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was already in political paralysis, already was not able to do much, and it was under the protectorate of Russia. It was already completely under the control of Russia, within its full borders. Okay? Russia, believe it or not, did not want the partitions. Russia wanted to control the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth completely within its full borders, which was what was happening. It was Prussia that was actually pushing for the partition because it wanted a piece of the action. It wanted a piece of that country. Okay? It was far more politically actually advantageous for the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the entirety of it, to be under the protectorate of Russia. Okay? So this is also incorrect, actually. As critical as I am of Russia, as you know. Okay? I'm as big of a Russia hater as you can get. Austro-Hungarian was not a thing back then yet. It was Austria. Still. Back then it was still just Austria. The Polish Commonwealth was not partitioned by Austro-Hungary. It was partitioned by Austria. Austria sort of just joined in. Okay? But Prussia was the most aggressive party in this whole mess.
Of the Baltics were absorbed into the expanding Russian Empire. Russian authorities moved quickly to dismantle local institutions, suppress native languages, and impose imperial rule from St. Petersburg. Nobles, who once debated kings, now bowed to tsars. National identity was reduced to folklore.
Oh, fuck, what do you mean national identity was reduced to folklore? There was no such thing as national identity back then. The Polish national identity formed after the partitions. It formed after the partitions. How can you say that national identity was reduced to folklore if national identity up to that point was not even a thing? Oh my god. I thought we would have a nice time, okay? I thought we would have a nice time watching a video trashing Russia, but instead I see a video full of inaccuracies and straight up bullshit. Just why? Why? Instead of nodding and agreeing, I have to spend all this time correcting the video.
Tolerated only when it stayed politically harmless.
National identity was reduced to folklore. What the fuck is this?
The logic behind Russia's policy was brutally pragmatic. If the only path to social mobility was through service to the Tsar, then the empire's best minds would be drawn into the system and would have a stake in its survival. To make that happen, education was to be conducted in Russian. Local languages were sidelined, and expression of national identity were seen as threats to imperial unity. If you didn't speak Russian and didn't cooperate with the empire, your prospects were dead on arrival. And if you actively promoted independence or national consciousness, the outcome was even worse: exile, forced labor, or the gallows.
Wow.
But because this was about more than politics, because it was about identity and, once again, about faith, the people of Poland and the Baltics never accepted it silently. Uprisings erupted again and again. Each was crushed with brutal efficiency. Tens of thousands...
Actually, no. Each uprising was not crushed with brutal efficiency, okay? And also, Russia never did it alone, okay? Let's look. This is pissing me off, actually. This is pissing me off a lot. I hate this. I hate when history is just reduced to bullet points. And people eat it up. But then again, if you... Oh my god.
Executed, imprisoned, or sent to Siberia. And yet, the resistance lived on. in underground schools, in banned books, in whispered poems, and in the quiet defiance of memory.
The Soviets attack. Wait, what the? What?
After the
How
Bolshevik
did we go?
Revolution,
How did we go from the uprisings to boom? Now we have Soviets attacking. How did that? That is such a time skip. Incredible.
Poland and the Baltic states finally regained their independence. The newly formed Soviet state tried to reconquer them, but it was too weak.
Also, where is Ukraine in this story? I have to ask, where is Ukraine in this story? Like, I'm beginning to look suspiciously at the fact that this person is of Russian heritage, apparently. Okay? Like, where is Ukraine was a part of this story? Where is it?
And too resource-starved to succeed. So, for a brief moment in history, these nations were left alone. They became fully sovereign countries, internationally recognized, with their own governments,
What about
languages,
Ukraine?
and cultures. But even in peace, they lived under the shadow of a volcano, quiet for now, but always threatening to erupt. Throughout the 1920s, the border between the Soviet Union and its western neighbors became a hub for the black market.
What do you mean, quiet? There was a whole Polish-Soviet war. What do you mean, quiet? Cześć. Hello, my cafe. Say, I'm going snooze mode. Have a nice one.
The Soviet economy was collapsing, and the Bolsheviks couldn't even provide basic goods. So everything was smuggled in, from French perfume, often made locally in Polish villages, to scientific books. And people made fortunes. Some smuggled soap and sugar, others smuggled people, guiding desperate souls through dense forests and across rivers.
I'm gonna go
helping
grab a
them
blanket or like a sleeping bag because I'm cold, but I'm very disappointed in this video. I don't like it at all. I came here to hate Russia. I did not come here to hate the video, okay? I did not come here for this. I did not sign up for this. Schizo again? Who? What do you mean? What are you talking about? Contract with numbers. Oh, nothing. Alright, let's continue.
escape from the USSR. I tell the full story of how it all worked in my historical novel, The Prince of the Soviets. The link is in the description. But by the 1930s, the air on the border grew heavy again.
I am very, very disturbed by the lack of mention of Ukraine and Belarus for that matter in that beautiful, beautiful story, okay? I am very, very disturbed.
It became clear that the Soviet Union was not done. Moscow was preparing for another war. In 1939, Stalin signed a secret pact with Nazi Germany. Together, they divided Eastern Europe between them. When Germany invaded Poland from the west, the Soviets marched in from the east, claiming they were protecting Belarusians and Ukrainians on Polish territory. Then, in the 1940s, while the world was fixated on the fall of Paris, the Soviet Union moved swiftly to annex the Baltic republics. It was staged as voluntary reunion. Moscow installed pro-communist regimes, and once the Soviets had secured Moscow in republics, it was staged as voluntary reunion. Moscow installed pro-communist regimes, and once the Soviets had secured their new territories, they wasted no time. Deportation trains rolled out. Mass executions began. Anyone who might protest the so-called liberation from capitalism was silenced forever.
Beautiful.
After World War II,
the future of Belarus looks grim. Yeah, it does, and people should be talking about that a little bit more. I feel like people should be talking about Belarus a little bit more. Maybe it's up to me. It's up to this streamer to talk about this topic.
Once again came under Moscow's control, as territories reshaped to serve the Soviet system. For Poland, that meant becoming a satellite state, a puppet government, a censored press, and a secret police trained by the KGB. For the Baltics, it was worse: full annexation, forced collectivization, and intense Russification. The Baltic states had suffered severe losses during World War II, on the battlefield, in mass purges, and among displaced refugees. The population gaps were filled by migrants from eastern and central Russia. My own distant relatives were peasants whose village had been destroyed during the Nazi occupation. They had nowhere to return to, so when the chance came to settle on an abandoned farm in Lithuania, they took it and considered themselves lucky. This happened across the Baltics.
There you go. Also, I'm pretty sure. No, I'm not even gonna go there.
Russian-speaking migrants took
Belarusian people are being told that their language and culture is not proper by their own head of state. It's disgusting. Yeah, it's true. It feels like watching that one stupid person in high school do a presentation on some subject they have no idea about. True. Like, I don't even... This is frustrating. This is a frustrating watch for sure. I just hate it when history is just... Okay, I hate two things. I hate it when history is just reduced to bullet points. That already in itself is very bad, okay? And then you can go one step further and make the bullet points incorrect, and then it's just a mess, okay? Not only is the history just reduced to a bunch of bullet points, the bullet points themselves are not even correct. And then you completely lose me.
Jobs in state offices, universities, factories, and farms. But they didn't see themselves as Lithuanians, Latvians, or Estonians. They were Soviet citizens, and many never bothered to learn the local language or engage with the culture. This created a mixed population and growing national tension. One part of society wanted to preserve its identity. The other didn't think identity mattered, as long as Moscow was in charge. At the same time, it was considered prestigious to live in the Baltic republics. They felt more European, and for some reason, the stores in Tallinn, Riga, and Vilnius were better stocked than those in central Russia. I remember visiting Vilnius in 1990 during the economic collapse of the USSR. They had mascara in the department store, 3 or 4 types of cheese, sausages. It was shocking. The empire was clearly living worse than some of its colonies.
Damn.
As Soviet kids, we had no idea how complicated the relationship between Russia and the Baltic states really was. We were taught they had peacefully joined the USSR. Sure, we knew some people there did not like Russians, but it seemed ridiculous.
Kielbasa.
Weren't we the good guys? Of course we were. Or so we thought. As for Poland, we knew very little. There were a few Polish adventure books in the children's library. A popular Polish World War II TV series, Four Tank Man and a Dog.
Oh my god, really? Four Tank Man and a Dog. Okay, I'm gonna do this for you, okay? I have to explain. This is very famous. I know of it. Four Tank Man and a Dog. This is pretty self-explanatory, but we'll still read briefly a wiki about it, okay? Four Tank Man and a Dog. Wikipedia. Polish black and white TV series based on the book by Janusz Przymanowski, made between 1966 and 1970. The series is composed of 21 episodes of 55 minutes each, divided into 3 seasons. It is set in 1944 and 1945 during World War II and follows the adventures of a tank crew and their T-34 tank, the first Polish army. The book and TV series have achieved and retained a cult series status in Poland and former Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc countries. The T-34-85 tank Rudy, Ginger, with the identifying number 102, a German Shepherd dog from Siberia, Sharik, pronounced Sharik. Why did I just do that? Sharik, pronounced Sharik. Little ball in Russian, a nickname in the vein of furball in Polish. The word is similar to share, meaning grey, and sharik, meaning scarf. And to a lesser extent, the crew Jankos, Gustavier, Grigory Saakashvili, Tomasz Czereśniak, and their commander and mentor, Olgierd Jarosz, as well as other heroes of the series, have become icons in Polish popular culture. There you go. The main cast of the Four Tank Man and a Dog at the series premiere in Warsaw Congress Hall, January 1966, the famous dog. And it had a theme song, My czterej pancerni, pa 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 pa. and so on and so forth. A very famous thing. So yes, I have managed to squeeze out a positive out of this video, talking about the series. All right.
And Polish fashion magazines, people with the right connections somehow got their hands on. That was it. So when the Soviet Union began to crack, and these nations walked away slamming the door behind them, we were stunned. We watched the news show people tearing down Soviet monuments and shouting anti-Russian slogans. To us kids, it looked surreal. Who are these people? And why do they hate us? We never did anything
We never did anything to them. Oh boy.
to them. The answer we were given was simple. They are nationalists, crazy ones, maybe even neo-Nazis. It felt like a deep injustice and a profound ingratitude. We helped them rebuild their cities and industries after the war.
Yeah, by the USSR forbade Poland from taking the Marshall Plan. The USSR forbade Poland from taking reparations from Germany, and actually did not pay the equivalent to Poland, which it promised to do. Poland.
And this is how they repay us?
Yes. This is how they repay you. Jesus.
So, where does this all leave us? Russia, still clinging to an imperial identity. Poland and the Baltic states, still defined by the trauma of being conquered. And Ukraine, caught in the middle, fighting not just for its own future, but for the very idea that empire no longer rules this continent. The Kremlin refuses to accept that smaller nations have the right to choose their own path. In their worldview, only the big players matter. Poland and the Baltic states, not real countries, just former provinces that forgot their place. That's why Putin and his supporters insist that these nations join NATO only because the United States made them. Because in their version of reality, power is never chosen. It's taken. And if something else takes what Russia believes is hers, then war becomes necessary.
Inevitable.
It's not a strategic mindset. It's not even about security. It's an ancient instinct, resurrected every time a man or a group of men gain control of vast resources through violence. They don't use that power to serve their people, who barely matter to them. They use it to boost their own status in the eyes of others so-called important players. I have a separate video where I break down how and why this worldview formed. You can check it out if you want to dive deeper.
Was it because of a new little ice? No, what? Never mind. I'm being a prick now.
But here's the bottom line.
The new
If we want
Ice
a world
Age.
without war, we need a political architecture where no one, no empire, no leader has enough unchecked
No
power
kings.
to keep playing this ancient dominance game. Because it's not just destructive, it's outdated. These are survival instincts from the Ice Age, when status meant survival.
Oh my god, really? I was just kidding. Like, it's all...
And survival meant being the biggest bully. But today, the
I'm sorry, I cannot bear this sort of simplification. Oh, so it's all because of the Ice Age. And then the mini Ice Age. Got it. Cool. Great.
fittest
Amazing.
shouldn't be the strongest or the loudest. It should be the wisest. If this gave you new insight into why history still haunts us today, share this video with someone
It did not, actually. It made me angry.
who needs to hear it.
Nobody needs to hear it. I mean, yes, nobody needs to hear it.
Every share helps bring clarity where propaganda spreads confusion. And if you want to help me continue unraveling stories like this, subscribe or support directly by joining my think tank, sending a super thanks, or simply buying me a coffee. Your support isn't just helping.
Oh my god. Let me see. Let me see what other videos we have here.
Step into the Moscow metro during rush hour and it feels like you've wandered into a fashion show.
Okay, who is this? Is there an information? I'm Elvira Baret, an author born in Soviet Russia, USSR, exploring history, culture, social dynamics, and geopolitics, primarily Russian, but always with global critical perspective. Through my videos, I blend careful analysis with human stories to guide viewers through complex ideas with respect and clarity. I don't chase trends. I tell hard truths I've lived and researched. So, who is this? Is this... If I Google this person, will anything come up of use? Discover surprising, fearless truths behind the stories you thought you knew. About people, power, and history, told clearly, honestly, and grounded in original sources. Original... What does that mean? Original sources. It should be just grounded in primary sources, not original sources. Really. Original sources. Okay, then. Faido! Faido!